The cafe was small but warm, the smell of fresh coffee filling every corner. People came in and out, chatting softly or tapping on their phones, not paying much attention to the young woman behind the counter. She moved quietly, almost like she wanted to be invisible. Her hair was tied back, her uniform simple, and her eyes, though kind, were always focused, as if she carried her own little world inside her. Customers often thought of her as polite and gentle, someone who did her job without drawing attention. No one really noticed how extraordinary she was, not yet. She had always loved music, especially the piano. Even as a little girl, she would spend hours with her fingers dancing across the keys. It was her escape, her way to express feelings she couldn't say out loud. At home, she practiced alone, letting every note carry her thoughts. Sometimes her parents would listen. Sometimes the walls of her small room were her only audience. But each note she played was filled with passion and precision, the kind of talent that made people stop and stare if they ever heard it. Yet here, in this quiet cafe, she kept her gift a secret. She was careful, almost hiding it from the world. The manager of the cafe was very different. He was confident, maybe a little arrogant, and loved to be the center of attention. He believed he knew everything about the people who worked for him. To him, the young woman behind the counter was just another quiet employee, someone who followed instructions and kept the cafe running smoothly. He had seen many people, talented or not, but he had a habit of underestimating anyone who seemed ordinary at first glance. One afternoon, the cafe was a little busier than usual. The sunlight spilled through the windows, making the tables warm and inviting. The young woman was wiping down the counter, her hands moving carefully as she worked. The manager came over, laughing as he spoke. He leaned on the counter and looked at her with a smirk. "I heard you play the piano," he said. There was a teasing tone in his voice, as if he was joking. "But come on, don't tell me you're good. I bet you can't even play a simple song in front of people." She paused for a moment, unsure if he was serious. But she nodded politely, not showing any sign of what she really felt inside. "I can play a little," she said softly. Her voice was calm, almost shy. The manager laughed louder, drawing the attention of a few customers who glanced over curiously. He leaned closer and said, "How about this? If you play the piano here in front of everyone, I'll quit. That's right. I'll leave this cafe because I just don't believe anyone like you could surprise me." The young woman felt a chill run through her. The manager was joking, but there was a challenge in his words, a kind of testing that made her heart beat faster. She could feel every eye in the cafe turning toward her, waiting to see what she would do. Her stomach was full of nerves and excitement all at once. She thought about walking away, ignoring the teasing, but something inside her stirred. This was her chance. A small but real chance to show the world even a glimpse of her talent. She wanted to prove, not for him but for herself, that she could rise to the moment. For a long moment, she stayed quiet, thinking about what it would mean. Her mind wandered to her childhood, to the piano in her small room where she spent countless hours learning, practicing, and perfecting every note. She remembered the first time she played a song flawlessly, the feeling of her fingers moving as if they had a mind of their own. Music had always been her companion, her friend, and her secret. Now that secret had a chance to shine, even if only for a few minutes. The manager continued to laugh, clearly enjoying the situation. He didn't know that she had trained for years, that her hands could create music that made people stop and listen. He only saw a quiet girl behind the counter, someone who seemed too ordinary to be remarkable. That misjudgment made him even more confident. He waved his hand dismissively, waiting for her to decline, to prove him right. But she didn't step back. She walked slowly toward the small piano in the corner of the cafe. It wasn't grand or shiny, just a simple instrument, but to her, it was a gateway to something magical. Customers moved closer, curious now. They could sense something was about to happen, though none of them knew what. The manager watched her with a smug expression, sure he was about to witness a polite failure. She sat down on the piano bench, her fingers hovering above the keys. Her heart was racing, but there was also calmness in her mind, a quiet confidence that came from years of practice and dedication. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself feel the music in her mind before her fingers even touched the keys. She remembered every lesson, every song, every late-night practice session. And then she began to play. The first notes were soft, almost shy, as if testing the waters. But soon they grew stronger, more confident. Her hands moved with grace, every key pressed with purpose and emotion. The music filled the cafe, a gentle melody that slowly captured everyone's attention. Customers stopped talking, their eyes widening, their heads turning. Even the manager's laughter faded, replaced by a curious frown. He had expected awkwardness, but this was something entirely different. As she played, the music became more intricate, more powerful. Each note seemed to tell a story of a hidden talent, of years of hard work, and of a passion that could not be contained. The young woman played not for the applause, not for recognition, but because she loved the music and wanted to share a piece of herself with the world. The cafe, once full of chatter and casual noise, had become a stage for her brilliance. Every customer was entranced, watching her fingers dance across the keys with skill and emotion that seemed almost impossible for someone so young and quiet. The manager's confidence began to crumble. His face turned pale, his smug smile disappearing as he realized that he had underestimated her. He leaned forward slightly, unable to tear his eyes away from the piano, watching as the young woman, who seemed so ordinary just moments ago, transformed into something extraordinary. The music was not just sound. It was a display of genius hidden in plain sight. He had laughed, but now laughter felt out of place, replaced by awe and disbelief. Customers were whispering to each other, trying to describe what they were hearing. Some had tears in their eyes, others were simply staring, mouths slightly open in shock. No one could believe that such talent could exist in someone who had seemed so ordinary, so quiet, so unnoticed. The young woman didn't look at them. She didn't need to. She was completely absorbed in the music, in the moment, letting her heart speak through her fingers. Minutes passed, though it felt like seconds, and the last note lingered in the air, soft but powerful. Silence followed, a silence so deep that it seemed to echo louder than any applause could. Then, slowly, the cafe erupted in claps, cheers, and stunned murmurs. People were coming up to her, praising her talent, some even asking how she had learned to play so beautifully. The manager stood frozen, unable to move, his challenge forgotten, his laughter vanished. The young woman had not only met his challenge but had exceeded every expectation, leaving everyone in awe. In that moment, the young woman felt a sense of pride, not arrogance, but quiet satisfaction. She had shown, even if briefly, who she really was. She had shared her passion and her gift with the world, and the world had noticed. The manager, once so confident, now realized he had been completely wrong about her. He had laughed, not knowing that she had been a legend from the beginning. But legends often hide in plain sight, and this young woman had finally let hers be seen, even if only for a moment in a small cafe, with nothing but her piano and her talent. And so, in the heart of that simple cafe, a young woman quietly proved that true talent cannot be hidden forever, and that sometimes, the people who seem ordinary are capable of extraordinary things. After the music stopped, the cafe was still buzzing with excitement. Customers were talking about what they had just heard, some still shaking their heads in disbelief. The young woman stepped back from the piano, her hands resting lightly on the edge of the instrument. She felt a mix of relief and nervousness. She had shown her talent, but she knew this was only the beginning. She had opened a door she had always kept closed, and now she had to walk through it carefully. The manager was standing in the middle of the cafe, his arms crossed, his face pale. He looked like he was trying to understand what had just happened. He had laughed, sure that she would fail, and now he was forced to confront the truth. He had underestimated her completely. For a moment, he didn't speak, only staring, and it was clear that he was thinking hard. The staff, who had known her for a long time but had never seen this side of her, were whispering excitedly. Some looked amazed, some were clapping quietly, and some were trying to hide their own surprise. No one had expected this quiet, polite young woman to play like a legend. The young woman returned to her usual spot behind the counter, carefully wiping a table. She didn't rush to speak or celebrate. She was used to keeping her emotions controlled, even when others couldn't understand why she did what she did. But inside, she was thinking about what had just happened. She remembered every note she had played, every melody that had filled the room. It had felt natural, like her hands knew exactly what to do. She realized that this wasn't just about showing off her talent. It was about confidence, about finally trusting herself to share what she loved. The manager finally spoke, his voice shaky. I didn't expect that," he said, trying to regain control of the situation. He looked around at the customers who were still murmuring excitedly. "I honestly didn't think you could do it." His words were meant to be dismissive, but they sounded more like admiration now. The young woman nodded politely, not saying much. She didn't need to defend herself. The music had spoken louder than words ever could. Some of the customers came over to compliment her, asking questions about how long she had been playing and where she had learned. She answered quietly, not wanting to draw too much attention to herself. She felt a strange mix of pride and humility. Pride because she had accomplished something incredible, humility because she knew there was so much more to learn and explore. She realized that this moment, while important, was only the first step of a much longer journey. The staff members who worked with her began talking among themselves. They were amazed that someone they had seen every day, who seemed so ordinary, could have such extraordinary skill. Some joked that the manager should really be the one resigning, given how badly he had misjudged her. Others quietly admitted they had suspected she was talented but never imagined she was this good. The atmosphere in the cafe had changed completely. What was once a simple, quiet place now felt charged with energy, as if something extraordinary had just happened and everyone was part of it. The manager, still recovering from his shock, tried to regain his usual composure. He walked over to her and said, "Well, you proved me wrong. I guess I owe you an apology." His words were hesitant, and it was clear that pride was still keeping him from fully admitting how impressed he was. She nodded politely, accepting the apology in her own quiet way. She didn't need to make him feel small. She only wanted to move forward, to focus on what she loved, the piano and the music it created. After a moment, she looked around at the cafe, noticing the expressions on the faces of those who had watched her play. There was excitement, admiration, and even a little disbelief. Some people were talking about coming back just to hear her play again. Others were suggesting she perform somewhere bigger, somewhere people could truly appreciate her talent. She felt a mixture of emotions. It was overwhelming, yes, but also exciting. She realized that sharing her gift could change more than just her own life. It could inspire others too. That evening, after the cafe had quieted down, she sat at the piano again, alone this time. She wanted to practice not for anyone else, but for herself. She played slowly, carefully, savoring every note. She thought about what had just happened, about how one small challenge had turned into something much bigger. She realized that the manager's words, though careless, had given her an opportunity. Sometimes, people unintentionally push you toward your destiny, even when they think they are mocking you. She remembered her childhood, the early lessons, the long hours of practice, and the times when no one had watched or cared. Those moments had shaped her, made her patient and disciplined. She understood now that all of that preparation had led to this moment. And yet, she knew this was only the beginning. There were so many songs she wanted to play, so many emotions she wanted to express. She had only scratched the surface of what she could do. The next day at the cafe, news of her performance had spread. Some regular customers had returned, hoping to hear her play again. The staff were buzzing with excitement, sharing stories of how people outside the cafe had heard about the young woman who had stunned everyone with her talent. Even the manager seemed different. He no longer mocked or underestimated her. Instead, he watched with a cautious respect, realizing that she had changed something in the cafe, something that could not be ignored. She continued to work quietly, serving coffee and cleaning tables, but now there was a new energy around her. People watched her with curiosity, some with admiration, and some with genuine awe. She moved with the same calm demeanor, but inside, her confidence was growing. She had taken the first step toward embracing her talent in the world, and it felt both terrifying and exhilarating. She knew that more challenges would come, but she also knew that she had the strength and skill to face them. Throughout the day, she thought about the future. She considered the possibilities of sharing her music more widely, of performing for larger audiences, of using her talent to inspire and connect with others. She realized that the manager's challenge, though seemingly simple, had opened a door she had never dared to open before. It had forced her to step out of her comfort zone and show the world who she really was. By the end of her shift, she felt a sense of accomplishment. She had faced the challenge not for the manager, not for the customers, but for herself. She had proven that her talent was real and that she was capable of more than anyone had imagined. The cafe was no longer just a workplace. It was a stage, a place where her music could touch people's hearts. She felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. This was only the beginning of her journey, and she was ready to embrace it fully. As she left the cafe that evening, she looked back one last time at the piano. It was a simple instrument, but to her, it represented opportunity, expression, and the power to change perceptions. She smiled quietly, knowing that she had taken a significant step forward. The manager's laughter was no longer important. What mattered was the music, her passion, and the realization that she had a gift worth sharing. She walked home with a lightness in her step, her mind alive with melodies, each one a reminder that legends often start in the most ordinary places, waiting for the right moment to shine. The days after her performance were unlike anything she had ever experienced. The cafe felt alive in a new way, as if every corner and every table carried the echoes of her music. Customers seemed more attentive, staff whispered about her talent, and even the manager was quieter, as if he were thinking about what had just happened. She continued her work with the same quiet diligence, but inside, her mind was full of possibilities. She realized that people were beginning to notice her gift, and that recognition brought both excitement and pressure. At home, she spent long hours sitting at her piano, practicing and experimenting with melodies. She remembered the small lessons she had learned as a child: precision, patience, and emotion. Now, she wanted to take it further, to explore the depth of her ability. She didn't play for anyone else, only for herself, allowing her fingers to move freely across the keys. Every note carried her feelings, her dreams, and her memories. It was in these moments alone that she felt the purest connection to music, the kind that made her forget the world around her. But she knew that staying hidden would not bring her true growth. She began thinking about performing in front of others, not just for the cafe but for a larger audience. She imagined the sound of applause, the recognition, and the chance to truly share her gift. It was both thrilling and frightening. She had spent so long keeping her talent secret that stepping further into the spotlight felt like a leap into the unknown. The manager occasionally approached her, still awkward from the previous event. He seemed hesitant, unsure how to interact with someone who had so clearly surpassed his expectations. One afternoon, he asked her softly, almost nervously, if she would consider playing again for the cafe customers. She nodded politely, agreeing, but her mind was already planning how she could prepare to make the next performance even more impressive. She knew that every time she played, people would expect something extraordinary, and she was determined not to disappoint. She started experimenting with new techniques, adding emotion and style to her music that she had never tried before. She explored pieces that challenged her, songs that demanded focus, skill, and creativity. Sometimes she struggled, hitting wrong notes or feeling frustrated when a melody didn't flow as she imagined. But she never gave up. Each mistake was a lesson, each challenge a step closer to mastery. She was learning not just to play music but to understand it, to feel it deeply and express it fully. Her practice sessions often stretched late into the night. The quiet of her small apartment was perfect for this kind of work. She could lose herself in the music without distraction. Sometimes she would stop and close her eyes, listening to the sound in her mind, imagining a room full of people reacting to her performance. It was a kind of rehearsal that built both skill and confidence. She knew that one day she would need that confidence in a real setting, in front of people who were expecting to be amazed. As she practiced, she also thought about her life at the cafe. The customers who had come to see her play, the whispers of excitement, and the manager's shocked expression all stayed in her mind. She realized that the cafe had become more than a place to work. It was a place where she could test herself, a stepping stone towards something greater. Each day brought small challenges, like handling curious customers while keeping her focus, or playing a piece in her head while serving coffee. These moments helped her prepare for the bigger stage she imagined. One afternoon, as she was practicing a particularly difficult piece, she heard a knock at her door. It was one of her neighbors, who had heard about her piano playing at the cafe. The neighbor wanted to listen and asked if she could come in. She hesitated for a moment, then agreed. She played the piece again, slowly at first, then with more confidence. The neighbor was amazed, praising her talent and encouraging her to perform for a larger audience. Their words sparked something inside her, a realization that her music could reach more people, that it was meant to be shared beyond the walls of her apartment and cafe. With renewed determination, she began setting small goals for herself. She wanted to learn more challenging pieces, to master techniques that would push her abilities to the limit. She studied different styles, from classical to modern, mixing them in ways that reflected her unique perspective. She recorded herself, listening critically to each performance and making adjustments. Each day was a step forward, a building of both skill and confidence. She was preparing herself for opportunities that she didn't yet fully understand, but she felt ready for them. Meanwhile, news of her talent continued to spread quietly. Some customers who had witnessed her performance shared stories with friends and family, praising the young woman who had stunned everyone with her piano playing. The cafe began to attract curious visitors, people who wanted to see her perform in person. The manager, once skeptical and mocking, now observed her with careful respect. He seemed to understand that her skill was rare and that it could not be ignored. Though he had once challenged her as a joke, he now recognized that she had something truly extraordinary. The young woman didn't let this attention distract her. She remained humble and focused, treating each performance as a chance to grow rather than a moment to show off. She understood that talent alone was not enough. Discipline, practice, and emotional connection were just as important. She worked on expressing herself through music, allowing each note to carry meaning. Her performances began to touch people on a deeper level, creating moments of connection and emotion that went beyond simple applause. One day, while practicing a particularly intricate piece, she felt a surge of inspiration. She imagined a large hall filled with people, each listening intently to her music. Her fingers moved faster, more confidently, as if the piano knew what she wanted to express. She played with a mix of technical skill and emotion that she had never achieved before. When she finally stopped, she felt a sense of satisfaction and excitement. She realized that her preparation was paying off, that she was becoming the musician she had always wanted to be. As her confidence grew, so did her vision for the future. She began thinking about performing outside the cafe, about sharing her music with larger audiences. She considered competitions, recitals, and even opportunities to teach others who wanted to learn. The possibilities seemed endless, and for the first time, she felt that her talent could truly make a difference. She understood that the path ahead would require hard work and courage, but she was ready to face it. Back at the cafe, she continued to play for customers when opportunities arose, each performance more refined and expressive than the last. People began to recognize her not just for her skill but for the way she played with heart and emotion. She was no longer just the quiet girl behind the counter. She was a musician in her own right, someone whose presence and talent brought life to the space around her. The manager, once mocking, now encouraged her to take every opportunity to play, realizing that her music could bring attention and admiration to the cafe as well. In quiet moments, she reflected on how far she had come. From practicing alone in her room to playing in front of a small cafe audience, and now preparing for larger stages, she had grown in ways she hadn't imagined. She knew that talent alone wasn't enough. It was dedication, perseverance, and the courage to share her gift that made her exceptional. Each practice session, each performance, each challenge she faced was shaping her into the musician she aspired to be. She also thought about the manager's challenge, the moment that had started it all. What had seemed like a joke or a test had become a turning point in her life. It had pushed her to step forward, to reveal her talent, and to believe in herself. She understood now that sometimes unexpected moments can change everything, opening doors that were once hidden. And she was ready to walk through those doors, fully aware of the journey ahead and determined to embrace every part of it. The young woman continued to practice, to perform, and to grow. She knew that her journey was only beginning, and that the world had much more to see and hear from her. With every note she played, she felt more connected to her music, more confident in her abilities, and more determined to share her gift with others. The quiet girl who had once worked behind a cafe counter was slowly becoming a legend in her own right, ready to take on the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. The day of her next performance arrived, and the cafe was unusually crowded. Word had spread, and people came not only to enjoy coffee, but to witness the young woman who had stunned everyone with her piano skills. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, customers whispering excitedly, and staff exchanging glances that said they couldn't wait to see what she would do this time. Even the manager seemed tense, pacing slightly and occasionally checking his watch. He had seen her talent before, but he still couldn't predict what she would do next. The quiet girl behind the counter had grown into something extraordinary, and now everyone was about to witness it again. She sat down at the piano, her fingers hovering above the keys. For a moment, she closed her eyes, letting herself calm the nervous energy inside. She had practiced for weeks, preparing new pieces, refining old ones, and experimenting with melodies that could capture hearts. She knew that people expected something remarkable, and while that pressure was intimidating, it also inspired her. She had grown used to it now, using her nerves as fuel rather than fear. As she began to play, the first notes floated gently across the room. They were soft at first, testing the space and the audience. Then, gradually, the music became stronger, more confident, each note deliberate and expressive. Customers fell silent, leaning forward, their eyes fixed on her hands as they moved gracefully across the keys. The manager stopped pacing, his arms crossed, and watched in stunned silence. He had thought he knew what to expect, but her music was something beyond his understanding. It was not only skill but emotion, depth, and storytelling all at once. The young woman closed her eyes and let the music flow naturally. She thought about every experience that had led her here, from the quiet practice sessions at home to the first performance at the cafe. Each note carried a piece of her journey, her dedication, and her passion. She didn't play to impress. She played to express herself, to share a part of her soul with the world. And the audience felt it. There was a connection that went beyond words, a silent understanding between musician and listener. People were moved, some even teary-eyed, caught in the beauty of what they were witnessing. Midway through her performance, she introduced a complex piece she had been working on for weeks. Her fingers moved swiftly and precisely, executing challenging passages with ease. The notes intertwined, creating a rich, layered sound that filled the cafe. Customers were mesmerized, some holding their breath as they followed the rapid movement of her hands. The young woman was completely absorbed in the music, her body swaying slightly with the rhythm, her expressions changing with each emotion the piece conveyed. She was in her element, and everyone around could sense it. The manager's expression shifted from disbelief to admiration. He had mocked her once, thinking it was impossible for her to play in front of an audience, and now he was forced to confront reality. He had underestimated her talent completely. He realized that her skill was not just a matter of practice but a combination of natural ability, passion, and dedication. For the first time, he saw her not as a quiet employee but as an artist capable of creating something magical. His laughter, once mocking, had disappeared, replaced by a deep respect he didn't quite know how to express. The performance continued, moving seamlessly from one piece to another. Each song told a story, conveying emotions that words could not capture. She played with precision, yet each note was filled with feeling, resonating with everyone in the room. Customers were completely absorbed, their chatter gone, replaced by a sense of awe and admiration. The young woman had transformed the cafe into a concert hall, and every listener felt fortunate to be part of the experience. When she finished, the cafe erupted in applause. The sound was overwhelming, a mix of excitement, admiration, and genuine awe. People cheered, some standing to show their appreciation, while others wiped away tears touched by the music. The young woman smiled softly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had shared her gift once again, and this time the reaction was even stronger than before. She felt proud but remained humble, knowing that her journey was far from over. After the performance, customers approached her to express their admiration. Some asked how she had learned to play with such skill. Others wanted to know if she would perform elsewhere. The young woman answered politely, grateful for their kind words, but she didn't seek fame or attention. Her goal was to continue growing as a musician and to connect with people through her music. She understood that recognition was a byproduct of her passion, not the purpose of it. The manager approached her, his expression serious but respectful. He admitted that he had been wrong to underestimate her. "I didn't expect anything like this," he said quietly. "You've changed everything here." She nodded politely, accepting his words without arrogance. She had no desire to make him feel small. She only wanted to focus on her growth and the music she loved. The manager's acknowledgement was important, but it was her own sense of achievement that mattered most. Later, when the cafe was quieter, she reflected on the performance. She remembered the nervous anticipation, the feeling of her fingers moving across the keys, and the connection with the audience. She realized that each performance was a step forward, not only in skill but in confidence. She had learned to trust herself, to embrace her talent, and to share it without fear. The music had become a bridge between her and the world, a way to express what she could not say in words. She also thought about the future. This performance had opened doors, showing her that people were willing to listen, to appreciate, and to support her talent. She considered opportunities to perform for larger audiences, to enter competitions, and even to collaborate with other musicians. The possibilities were exciting, and she felt ready to embrace them. She knew that her journey would require hard work, discipline, and courage, but she was prepared to face the challenges. Each note she played was a testament to her dedication and her potential. As the evening ended, she played quietly for herself, allowing her fingers to explore melodies freely. The cafe was nearly empty now, the echoes of her performance still lingering in the air. She closed her eyes, letting the music carry her thoughts and emotions. She felt a deep connection to the piano, a bond that had grown stronger with each performance. It was more than an instrument. It was an extension of herself, a partner in her journey of discovery and expression. She knew that the road ahead would not always be easy. There would be challenges, skeptics, and moments of doubt. But she also knew that her passion and skill would guide her. Each performance, each practice session, each moment of courage was building a foundation for something greater. She was ready to face whatever came next, confident in her ability to continue growing, learning, and sharing her music. In that quiet cafe, surrounded by the lingering echoes of her music, the young woman understood something profound. Talent alone was not enough. It was the combination of dedication, emotion, and the courage to step forward that made her extraordinary. She had taken the first steps toward her destiny, and each performance was another stride forward. The audience, the manager, and the customers had witnessed her growth, but more importantly, she had witnessed it herself. She was ready to continue this journey, to embrace every opportunity, and to let her music shine for the world to hear. The young woman's reputation was growing quickly. Word of her extraordinary talent spread far beyond the cafe. People began visiting not just for coffee but to hear her play, some even coming from nearby towns. Each day brought new faces, all curious and eager to witness the music that had already impressed so many. She remained humble, continuing her work behind the counter, but the piano had become a central part of her life. It was no longer just a hobby or secret. It was a calling, a way to connect with the world and with herself. On a particularly busy afternoon, the cafe was packed. The air was filled with excitement and anticipation. Customers whispered among themselves, some with cameras ready, others simply wanting to experience the performance firsthand. The staff were buzzing with energy, proud to be part of a place that had gained such recognition. The manager, who had once mocked her, now watched with a mixture of awe and apprehension. He knew that something extraordinary was about to happen, and he could feel the weight of witnessing talent far beyond his expectations. She approached the piano slowly, her hands hovering over the keys. She felt a rush of emotions: excitement, nerves, and determination. She had prepared new pieces that she had been practicing for weeks, each more challenging than the last. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the calm settle over her, and then began to play. The first notes were soft, almost delicate, but they carried a power that immediately captured the attention of everyone in the room. The audience fell silent, as if sensing that something remarkable was unfolding. As she continued, the music became more complex and expressive. Her fingers moved with precision, yet each note was full of emotion. The melodies intertwined, creating a rich tapestry of sound that filled every corner of the cafe. Customers were mesmerized, their eyes following her hands, their hearts responding to the depth of her performance. Even the manager, who had seen her perform before, could not take his eyes off her. He had underestimated her once, and now he realized just how much he had misjudged her talent. The young woman played piece after piece, each one more intricate and moving than the last. She drew from her years of practice, from the countless hours spent alone at her piano, and from the emotions she had kept hidden for so long. Her music told a story, one of dedication, passion, and resilience. It was a story that everyone in the room could feel, even if they could not put it into words. The audience was completely captivated, some holding their breath, some with tears in their eyes, all sharing in the experience. The manager's shock grew with every note. He had laughed at the idea of her playing in front of people, confident that she would fail, and now he was faced with a level of talent that he could barely comprehend. Her music was not only technically flawless but also deeply emotional, something that went beyond skill. It was a natural gift, a legend unfolding before his eyes. He realized that he had underestimated her in every way and that her abilities were extraordinary. His pride and skepticism melted away, replaced by admiration and respect. Customers began to clap spontaneously between pieces, unable to contain their excitement. Some cheered, some stood, and some even whispered to friends, sharing their astonishment. The cafe, once a simple place for coffee and casual conversation, had become a stage for a young musician whose talent was undeniable. The young woman, though focused on the music, felt the energy of the audience feeding her performance, lifting her, and inspiring her to play even more beautifully. As she played the final piece, her fingers moved faster, more confidently, and with greater expression than ever before. The music soared, filling the cafe with a sense of grandeur and emotion that left everyone in awe. When the last note lingered and faded into silence, the room erupted in applause. It was loud, enthusiastic, and filled with genuine admiration. People cheered, some shouting her name, some standing in ovation. The manager, who had once mocked her, stood frozen, overwhelmed by the realization of her true genius. The young woman rose from the piano, smiling softly, acknowledging the audience with quiet grace. She did not need to speak to be appreciated. Her music had already spoken for her. Customers approached her, praising her talent, some asking about opportunities to hear her play again. She responded politely, graciously accepting their compliments but keeping her humility intact. She understood that her journey was just beginning, and that there was still much to learn and accomplish. The manager finally approached her, his expression a mixture of awe and respect. He admitted quietly and sincerely that he had been wrong to doubt her. "I never imagined this," he said, gesturing to the audience and the piano. "I underestimated you completely. You're remarkable." She nodded politely, accepting his words without arrogance. The acknowledgement was significant, but what mattered most was the connection she had created through her music and the sense of fulfillment she felt within herself. After the performance, the cafe remained filled with excitement. People continued to talk about what they had witnessed, sharing stories and encouraging others to come and see her play. The young woman felt a sense of pride in her work, not in a boastful way, but as recognition that her talent had touched others. She understood the power of her music to move people, to create moments of beauty and connection, and she was committed to continuing to develop and share that gift. That evening, when the cafe was quiet again, she sat at the piano alone. She reflected on the day, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. From the hours of private practice to the first cafe performance, and now to an audience completely captivated by her talent, she saw how far she had come. Each experience had strengthened her. Each challenge had taught her something new, and each performance had helped her grow as both a musician and a person. She played softly for herself, letting the music carry her thoughts and emotions. Each note reminded her of her dedication, her passion, and the belief that had kept her practicing even when no one else noticed. She felt a sense of completeness, knowing that she had shared something truly meaningful with the world. The piano was not just an instrument. It was a way to communicate, to express herself, and to connect with others in a way words could not. She also thought about the future and the opportunities that awaited her. Her talent was now recognized, and she knew that larger stages, bigger audiences, and even competitions could be possibilities. She felt excitement mixed with determination, ready to take on new challenges and continue her growth. She understood that her journey would require continued hard work, focus, and courage, but she was prepared to embrace it fully. Each performance was a step forward, each note a building block in the story she was creating. The young woman's talent had become undeniable, a true legend emerging in plain sight. The manager, the customers, and the staff had all witnessed something extraordinary, and she had proven not only her skill but her dedication and her ability to inspire. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she also knew that she was capable of achieving even greater things. Her music would continue to grow, reaching more people, touching more hearts, and leaving an impact that could not be forgotten. In that quiet moment at the piano, she felt a deep sense of connection to her music, to herself, and to the world around her. She had faced challenges, proven her abilities, and revealed her true talent. But more importantly, she had embraced the journey, understanding that each step, each performance, and each note played was part of a larger story. A story of passion, perseverance, and the extraordinary power of talent waiting to be discovered. And she knew that this was only the beginning. The days after her most stunning performance were unlike anything the young woman had experienced before. The cafe was buzzing more than ever, customers arriving early to get a good spot, eager to hear her play. Her reputation had grown far beyond what she had imagined. People were talking about her talent in other towns, sharing stories of the quiet girl who had transformed a simple cafe into a stage of extraordinary music. Every day brought new faces, each curious and excited, each expecting to witness something remarkable. Despite the attention, she remained humble and focused. Her work behind the counter continued as usual, but the piano had become more than just an instrument. It was a bridge between her and the world. She practiced with dedication, exploring new pieces, refining old ones, and challenging herself to reach heights she hadn't dared to imagine. Each note she played was filled with emotion, carrying her experiences, her dreams, and the years of practice she had invested. The manager had changed, too. Gone was the mocking, overconfident attitude. He now approached her with respect, quietly acknowledging her talent, and even encouraging her to play for the cafe's customers whenever she wished. Though he had once laughed at the idea of her performing, he now saw the profound impact she had on people. Her music had elevated the cafe into something special, and he recognized that he had underestimated her in every way. The young woman's performances began to attract attention beyond the cafe. Local musicians and teachers heard about her skill, and some even visited to watch her play. They were impressed by not only her technical ability but also her expressive style, which conveyed emotion in a way that went beyond notes and rhythms. It became clear that she was more than talented. She was exceptional, someone whose gift could touch hearts in ways that few could. With this recognition came opportunities. She received invitations to perform at local events, small concerts, and music gatherings. She even began thinking about the possibility of performing on larger stages, perhaps competitions or recitals that could bring her music to a wider audience. Each opportunity was both exciting and intimidating, but she faced them with courage. She had learned that sharing her talent required confidence, discipline, and a willingness to step beyond her comfort zone. Her practice sessions continued long into the evenings, each one a journey of exploration and growth. She experimented with different styles, combining classical pieces with modern melodies, and allowed her own emotions to guide the music. She learned to improvise, to let her fingers follow the flow of her feelings, creating something unique with every performance. Her dedication was relentless, but it was fueled by passion and love for her craft. The community around her began to embrace her as more than just a performer. She became a source of inspiration, a living example of what talent, persistence, and humility could achieve. Customers who had once come simply for coffee now stayed to hear her play, bringing friends and family along to witness her music. Her quiet nature and modest demeanor made her approachable, and her music left a lasting impression on everyone who heard it.